Hello everyone, thank you for being very patient. I know I haven't put out a lot of tutorials out there, but it's been pretty hectic last couple of months since I am coming close to graduation. Each semester is very, it gets more hectic and more tougher with each semester. But I have free time on my hands right now, and the reason I'm doing this is I just wanted to put out a much more clear explanation of alpha tutorials, because I still get a lot of questions on alpha bracelets, and I feel with my previous video I did not do justice quite much. So over here it's a much more clearer view, and also the fact that I'm not going to be using less colors. If you can see the pattern right here, I just whipped up this pattern, so don't mind, and I just colored in the boxes. So it's a standard pattern, pretty like simple for those of you advanced, but this one has more colors as compared to the alpha tutorial I did before. And the reason I'm doing this is so that you can differentiate between strings, because I do have a lot of questions and hopefully I will answer all of them on this video. So that being said, let's get right to it. So now this is the pattern we're gonna be doing today, and I'm not sure if I'm gonna show you completely, because I think at this point you might have an idea. But just to break it down for you on alpha bracelets. Now alpha bracelets are those that are different from normals. Usually normals use two pairs to tie with each other, but with alphas it's just a series of forward and backward knots. Okay, so now regarding the strings for an alpha, if you see this grid pattern right here, each pattern has a grid, and the boxes across say how many strings you are going to have. So these boxes across is basically these strings. Each box is a knot. So let's count the number of boxes in this pattern so we know how many strings we have. So counting from here, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. So that is 19 strings across. So therefore you're going to lay down 19 different strings to match this. And then going down below, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So that's 18 down below, which is basically the height of the pattern. So the strings across denotes how many strings you're going to lay down, and then down below will tell you the height. So that's width and height. So that's how you read the pattern. Now for the strings involved with the bracelet. So basically you have your base strings, and then this is your weaving string. So now what are base strings? Your base strings are the ones you lay down and are the ones that you will tie the knots onto to make up this pattern. The base strings represent how many strings you have, which is basically the strings across. So it's just something to that serves to guide you while doing your bracelet. Your weaving string, on the other hand, is the color you use for your background picture. Now there are many patterns that don't use that, so it's left up to you on which weaving string you want to use. So the blue right here is the background color. So you're gonna use this blue to tie on each and every string, so that it forms this background color, blue color right here. Now your add-on colors are the ones that you use for the patterns here. So there's a red add-on, a purple, a blue, orange, brown, and these are colors you will be using to make up the pattern right here. So and the thing is, for me personally, I choose different colors that are different from the base strings, so that it makes easier to differentiate. There are patterns, sometimes people, in order to reduce the string count, they use the base strings. Like for example, if this was the teal color right here, you would just, instead, if you were going from this way, you are doing backward knots if you're going from right to left. So instead of adding a new teal, you would actually just make a forward knot with your bass string. Some people do that, and that is possible, but for some patterns it may be complicated because you would have to know where to put your bass strings exactly, whether you need to put it here because this is where the teal color comes in, or here, because this is the part where the orange comes in. It seems pretty complicated for me personally. That's why I choose to just use add-on colors. Just bring in new string rather than using your bass strings. I just use my bass strings just to lay it flat out, and that's about it. They do nothing. They just sit there and do nothing. So but that's basically the point of your bass strings. They are supposed to just be there. But you can use that if as you like. For me personally, I prefer to add in new strings. I'd rather have that than the previous one. So for people wondering about beginning your bracelet, you can begin with buckles or braids. You can do whatever you want, but just make sure that for this pattern right here, I'm gonna write it down somewhere. For this pattern right here, so that's 19 strings wide, 19 strings across. I have terrible handwriting. 19 strings across and 18 down. Apart from that, I think I got it all down. Hopefully when we go through this pattern, you will see how it works. And with each row we finish, I will be striking it out so you don't get confused. So that being said, let's get knotting. So you're gonna take your weaving string, count the number of knots your background string. So you will be having, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that's 9 forward knots. Remember, alpha bracelets are only forward and backward knots. And with regards to string length, your weaving string always needs to be should be fairly long because you're going to be using them, you're going to weave them across. Your bass strings can be short because they're just going to sit there. They're not going to do anything. But your weaving strings need to be fairly long. Okay, so that's 9 across, right? So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so you've done 9 strings across. So we did this part right here. Now we need to introduce a color add-on, which is a red color. So I have my red right here. And the thing is with color add-ons, you can add them, when you make your bracelet for buckles. I just tend to stick them in right there. I just tend to stick them in, and then later I cut off the strings and glue the back sides together. So you're gonna introduce your color add-on, and your color add-ons always go below all your bass strings. So you go below all your bass strings, you bring them all the way over here, and then you go make a crisscross with your weaving string. So let me show you again. So when adding colors, you bring them below all your bass strings, you crisscross with your weaving string, and you pull here. So from above and knot it to the next string right next to your weaving string. And then you're gonna tie it like so. So under the base strings, over the weaving strings, and then tie it to the next string that comes after the weaving string. So you're gonna tie that. You can see my red is fairly short because the pattern doesn't use a lot of reds. So I decided to keep that short. And you're just gonna adjust that. And tie. And see, you changed color, which denotes this red right here. And then the rest of the pattern is the weaving strings. So again, you bring your weaving strings from the bottom, put out all the other base strings, you bring the weaving string, because you're going to switch up colors. Whenever you're switching up colors, this is basically it. You bring them down, put all your base strings, bring them down, all of your base strings, below all of your base strings, make a crisscross with the color you just used, go above it, and tie it to the string right next to the color add-on. And then you tie it. And with alphas, you always need to adjust them, but it's no trouble. It's worth it in the end, actually. You switch it up and tie. Oops, just leave that out. Tie it just to this one. And there. Then you're gonna go work all the way across till Okay, so as you can see, we have finished our first row, so that part right there. So we have 9, and then another one, and then the rest. Let me just cut this out so you guys don't get confused. There, we're done with that. So next, going on to the second row. Now the second row, so since you've reached this now, the second row is going to be backward knots because we're going to bring our weaving string all the way back here. So that's going backward knots. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's 8 backward knots. So take your string again, make a backward knot, and go 8 steps back. So 1. You always need to adjust because I'm very particular with bracelet edges. I like them clean cut, straight. 2. 3. 4. 5. 6. 7. And 8. After you reach this point, you can straighten up, push it up so that it doesn't leave few gaps. Sometimes while tying, you tend to go, in a diagonal manner. So just push that to tuck it in, make it tight. So we've reached this part right here. Now we need to again switch up our colors, which is red. So that's 1, 2, 3, red. So again, this is basically the layout of your strings, right? And your red is all the way over here. All the way over here. It doesn't matter because the distance is easier. With wider bracelets, sometimes it gets very frustrating for me, especially, when you're color add-on is here, and you need to make the knot all the way over here, and then you have to bring it all the way and then tie it and go backwards. And that, in cases like that, I'd actually introduce the same color add-on here and then tie it like this, because it's much easier and you don't have to tug on those strings more. So, but in this case it's small, the distance is fairly close, so you can still use the same color add-on. So we need to change it here, right? So you bring it below all the strings. So bring it below all the way over here. Then you go across or above your weaving string. It's the same technique here, but this time we need to go backwards. So you have to bring it across here and then go backwards. So again, your weaving string, your color add-on is here. You bring it below all the colors that comes after it. You crisscross over your weaving string and you tie it to the next string you have to use. So you make a backward knot here with the base string. You always tie onto the base string, never your weaving string and never your color add-ons. And then just switch the color up and the second knot. And there you go. You switched the color, which denotes this. So you did one. Let's do another one. Two more. One, two. Now again, you need to switch it back to your background color, your blue. So your blue is hiding beneath all your other strings. So bring all your other strings above, like so. Bring your bring your blue down below. Crisscross with the string you just worked with, or the string you want to switch up, and tie it to the string next to it, and just tie it on and knot. Sometimes alpha bracelets can have tension, as you can see, little bumps. So you always, it gets better with practice. Believe me, being someone who started off with her first alpha being so crooked and so bad, I am so embarrassed when I look at it now, but you get better at it with practice. And then you tie the rest, you finish the rest of the row. And now we've come to the end of second row, so let me just crisscross that out. Okay, so now it's basically the same thing as step one. You're gonna go all the way across. Now again, the third row is gonna be forward knots because your weaving string is here. Okay, so I've already started with the third row and I did 3 knots. I was just confused where we were, but okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 forward knots. I already did 3 forward knots with the background colors, so let's finish the rest. So now we've come to this part right here where we need to switch it up to a purple, right? So now in the start I showed you that I introduced my color red over there. You can introduce it anywhere. Normally I would introduce it here in the sides and then just stick it up with some tape because I don't like adding my color add-ons while making my buckles for my bracelets because they're pretty short. Some of them are pretty short and I don't want them just hanging around. I'd rather have them add on and then glue them back on together. It's I know it's weird, but I just do it. I don't know why I do it. I just do it. But yeah, so we're gonna introduce the purple, and this is the purple I will be using. This color right here. So now another method I use for introducing color add-ons is by sticking them back to the back of the bracelet because it makes it much easier to tie them on. So you can either do it from here, but I will show you where I stick my color add-ons to the back of the bracelet so that after I'm done with the whole pattern, I just snip all the back, the back leftovers, and then glue it together. Now I know many of you must be wondering, why do I have to why do I have to always cut and paste my strings in here? Is because I use crochet balls. If you've seen these, I use these kinds, and it is very distracting and slows me down when I actually, like I know some of you guys use the thread ball and then tie on your bracelets. For me, it just slows me down. It's very distracting. If you're using something like this, a much more thinner bundle, I could do that actually, but it's just very distracting. I'd rather have everything laid out and me tie than hold something than hold something with my hand and then tie on. It's very distracting. But yeah, so we're gonna grab a piece of tape, like a small piece of tape. Just tiny bit, like so. And you're gonna take the edge of your string. You're gonna stick the tape on. And you're gonna stick this where you need the purple in. So I need it around here. So I'm just gonna lift all my strings up. And instead of sticking out down like this, make it upside down. Trust me, it just works upside down. Sometimes the directionality of strings. And you just stick it onto the paper or to the back of your clipboard. And you bring back down all your strings. And see, you have a color add-on hanging in the background. So you can either do it this way or this way. These are the two methods I use to add my add-ons to switch up my colors. Okay, so now this is dangling in the back and you want to change this purple. So you bring this, so it's already in the background. You don't need to bring it again anywhere because it is already in the background. Then you crisscross it with the blue. Because you stopped here, you want to switch it to the purple. You crisscross with the blue, go over the blue, make an X mark, go over the blue, and tie it to the next string besides the blue. So you're going to switch up to this, and this is our base string. Remember, we always tie onto the base string, so not the red just stays in the background. So again, you bring your purple above the blue and tie it onto the string next to the previous string you just worked with. So with a forward knot to switch up the color, adjust and double knot it to secure, and there you go, you switch that up. Okay, so now you're going to switch it up back again to red. So that's 1 2 3 reds. Again, bring your red below everything else. It's already in the background. Crisscross it with the purple because you just worked with the purple. So crisscross that, bring it above the purple and tie it onto the string right next to the purple. So I see my strings are getting fairly short. That's because I cut them that way. And double knot for security. And then you're gonna tie 2 more of these. Yep, I should have cut them a bit longer, but that's no problem. These are actually all scrap strings I'm using right now. So they're not the best, but it's just for tutorial purposes. And you tie that. So we've come to this point right here. Now you need to switch it up to a purple again. So this is one of the things I was talking about. Sometimes when your bracelets, this bracelet is, short. But sometimes you have bracelets that are this wide, and I've worked with bracelets that are this wide. And, when you need your purple around here, you need to bring them below all your strings, tug them all the way over here, and then go back. Sometimes, the tension causes the string to pull. like so, which I really don't like because see, it leaves gaps like that. But with a short bracelet like this, that's fine. But when you have bigger bracelets, I'd rather have you introduce a new purple on this side because it's much closer to the knot rather than, you know, bringing it all the way from the left all the way to the right. So we're gonna turn this purple here. So you're gonna bring it below all your strings, above the string you just worked with, which is your red color, and then you're gonna tie it on to the string right next to the red, the bass string right next to your red. So after switching that up, we need to switch it back to our background string. So search for your background string. It's already there in the background. Bring it below every other string. Crisscross it with the string you just worked with above and tie it to the string right next to it. And adjust. See, there's a fairly bit of tension here because see, there's bumps, but it's okay. It's my position is not the best right now, so do forgive me. So now we're done with 3 rows so far, and we're gonna do this part right here. So it's gonna be backward knots because your weaving string is to the right. So we have to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 step backwards. Now, if you can see, my weaving string is getting fairly short because the thing is, I don't like working with very long strings because you have to pull a really long way. I'd rather have like an average size around maybe 70 inches because that's the, you know, longest I can work with until my arms get crampy. But you know, that's the longest I can work with until I switch it up. So you can see my strings are getting fairly short. So let me just make we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so that's 6. Let me make 3 forward knots and use up the rest until how much I can use them up. So that's 1, 2, and 3. So you see, it gets difficult when your strings are short. So now, since I'm out of weaving string, I can't work with this. Just like any other color add-on, you're gonna bring in a new weaving string, same color, and just like how you did for the previous add-ons, you're just going to introduce this one as well. Now, this is one of the things I was talking about previously. It's a perfect example, actually. Good timing. So I'm running out of strings and I need to substitute with a new string of the same color in this area right here, right? So this is what I'm talking about. If you add it over here, let's say you want to add it and you just randomly pick the spot. So you bring your string here. Now look at it this way. You need to bring this all the way over here. And then also below the string you want to work with. So you see, that's a fairly long distance. And then you actually have to go back and tie them and make a backward. And sometimes, you see, if you pull this, it goes all the way down and it's just too much tension or too much distance between these two. You know, that sometimes it can get very difficult to tie it on. It is possible. You see, it is possible to tie it on, but you need to adjust them because you're bringing it all the way from the left to the right. So, and there is bound, and when you tie, there will be gaps. Like, so you can tie it, you can try to adjust it, but why go through all that trouble? You know, let me just remove this. Why go through all the trouble when you can actually introduce a string to the right because it is much closer to the knot you want to accomplish? So see, it causes a lot of tension between the strings. So in this case, since you want to introduce your new string in this part right here, I'd rather have you introduce the string here and tug it all the way over here. Bring it below all the bass strings and above the string you want to switch up. So you see how easy that is? There's no tension, no effort, and you switch that up. See, much easier to tie onto, like that. See, there's see the effort we had to put if you introduced it here. So, you know, it's just common sense. Just introduce the strings that are closer to the knots and you will have less tension on the bracelet on top. Now, to just avoid the confusion, I will just snip this off because it will bug me if I don't. So I'm just gonna snip that off. And I will glue that to the back of the bracelet later when I'm done with the bracelet. And now you can just finish off with the rest. So I'm gonna finish this row off and I'll leave you guys to it and we will meet back here again. Okay, so I'm halfway through this row right here. So the ones with white I have done. But this is another one of the tips I wanted to show you, another one of the examples I'm talking about when you're especially working with very wide bracelets. This one is fairly short, but let's, in a hypothetical situation, if you had a very wide bracelet, okay, and you have this long part right here, like the pattern in between, so you have a lot of strings before your weaving string, or you know, between your background strings. Sometimes you want to switch up your background strings, you know, all like I said in the previous when I showed you, your weaving string is here and you want to bring it all the way over here. Sometimes, you know, I'm just very picky about this. I'm sorry, but I am. But like sometimes, you know, you see, you bring your weaving strings and you tie it on to the next string to switch it up, right? So, and it depends on what type of a knotter you are. For me, I'm a pretty tight knotter. I tie my knots tight. So this is an issue for me. For those who tie them loose and are, you know, kind of careful with it, yeah, it's not to say I'm not careful, but it's just when I tie them, I just tie them. So you can see when I tie mine, there's a lot of tension between my strings, and you end up with a bumpy bracelet. You see this part right here, because your string below is pulling that all the way from the right to the left, and it creates this gap which tends to lift this part right here. So just like before, I'd rather, you know, as the distance grows with these two, like you're coming to a point where if you see this pattern, in the start, the weaving strings were closer to each other. So you could use the same weaving string on both sides. But as you progress to the pattern, you can see your weaving strings have a much wider distance between them with these strings right here, right? So I'd rather have one weaving string that covers up the left part and another on this side that covers up this part right here. Because if you do that, I promise you will actually have less tension between your strings. Many people tend to think that the lesser the strings, the better, but sometimes the more the strings, the better, because the final result is much more worth than, you know, fussing about lesser strings, right? For me personally, my personal opinion, but that's basically it. So I'd rather have, as you can see, I have one weaving string to the right side, right? So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna cut this off right now because I'm not gonna use all of it, but I'm just gonna cut this off. In reality, you would actually cut a new longer string and introduce it, and then I'll just tie that. So I have one of my weaving strings here. Let me just close that up. So I have one of my weaving strings here, and I'm just for tutorial's sake, like I said, I showed you two different methods. You can introduce them either at the top of your clipboard, or you can, let me get a tape. Like I said, you can introduce it on top of the clipboard. You can introduce it on top of the clipboard, or you can tape it down here at the side, and then, you know, bring it back down below all of the strings. My personal choice, I like to go behind. again, reduces tension. I'm all about reducing the bumps and the gaps between the bracelets. So I'll take this and I want to switch it up here, right? So I'll just tape that to the back of the to that area, closest to that area. And you see, now I have the same color of weaving string appearing in two different sides, and I will use this side, this blue, this background to just knot only these parts of the background, and this blue to knot these parts. It becomes much easier because it reduces tension. So let me just stick that up. Okay, so now since we have that, let's above your purple, and I have to finish this part right here. Now we have a new color add-on right here, as you can see, which is an orange. So this is the orange I will be using, and the orange is introduced here, so it's fairly close, so I will just put it right here and bring it all the way over here. Not much tension because it's pretty close, very close distance. So we're going to switch that color up, so below all the bass strings, above your blue, and tie it to the next string. Like so. Now there are times when you will have for example, if this is an orange and this is a teal, the same color as your bass strings, some people, what they do in that case is they actually use their bass strings to tie the bracelet, because it's very easy to switch up. It's very easy to switch up a teal color with your bass strings rather than adding another string, in case you don't want to add on. So for example, if you want this one to be teal, we've done this part right here. So for example, I'm just trying to clear out all the questions I got. For example, you want to change this to teal, so instead of adding a new color, you can actually just use your bass strings. But in this case, since your orange is here, you would just have to do a backward knot so that your orange comes here and this turns teal. So that's another way of reducing your string count. But like I said, the more complex the pattern, the more difficult that gets, because you would have to lay down your bass strings where that color is needed. And I think that just takes a lot of time. I'd rather just, cut off a string, add it in, and boom, you're done. But moving on. So now when you've come to this point right here, we have two weaving strings on either sides, like I said, right? So we want to switch it back to our background strings again. So like I said, you have a blue here, so you're not going to bring this blue all the way over here, because see, it causes tension. If there's a pull, it causes a lot of tension on this side. So rather than doing that, which is why I said to have another string here, because you can easily switch it up since it's much closer to the purple. So we're going to switch that up, and you're going to use this blue to cover this part and the other one to cover the other area. See? It's easy, much easier to switch it up, less tension. Okay, so we're gonna do this row right here right now, and I think this will be the last row. I thought we could actually cover it all up, but since it's gonna be very, very long, since I'm explaining and doing it, this will be the last one, because I think you have a good idea of how everything works by now. So let's just do this row together. So we have 1, 2, 3 backward knots. So use your weaving string to go 3 backward knots. Now you need to switch it up to a purple. Now we need to introduce a new color add-on, which is the green in this case. So I have my green taped here. So now, using the same technique, you're not going to introduce your green here because the string is needed all the way over here. Instead, you can either introduce it down below, which I prefer, or you can stick it up in the side and then just bring your strings down below. But me, will go there. Sorry, wrong side. Stick that there. And then switch that up. I know sometimes, with this technique you can have a lot of strings to manage, but honestly that was never difficult for me. I could manage a lot of strings rather than deal with having so much gaps and so much of tension on top of the bracelet. So with strings, it's okay, you can differentiate. So you need 2 of those, so bring it down below, above the purple, and onto your bass string. So you need 2 of those. And that's basically it. So we're done with this part right here. And so you use whatever I've said to work your way throughout the whole pattern until you reach the end. And yeah, that's all you need to know about bracelets, about the alpha bracelet. And I hope I covered all the necessary. So final tips with alpha bracelets: your weaving strings need to be fairly longer than every other string, but it really depends on the pattern, because sometimes, for example, your weaving string in this case would be long, but your purple strings in this case would be more longer because it has more knots as compared to the red here and the green here. The green and red and blue, yellow are needed only in few areas, but the purple, it covers a wide space. So it's just really common sense. And once you get a hang of, your string lengths, I think it'll be very much easier, because that is another question people have: string length. And I really cannot give you an accurate measurement, because our tying styles are different and it depends on the pattern as well. The same thing doesn't work every time. It's not a hard and fast rule, but you can get an approximate measurement when you tie a lot of when you practice and when you tie a lot of patterns. As far as alpha bracelets are concerned, this is all there is to it. So thank you very much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it. So have a nice day, and cheers everyone.